Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Steve Kozeniewski. I think I have figured out my technological issues and we are back to using my good high quality camera and microphone. Hopefully everybody can hear and can comment. So I'd like to welcome you all to Course 4 in the Publish Like a Motherfucker educational course. And this course is Marketing Like a Motherfucker. This is our fourth and final with a little asterisk course. It doesn't have to be the final, depending on what kind of interest there might be in future courses. You're free to let me know in the comments here or comments on my blog or my group blog where I also posted about this, or on social media. If you're interested in something more specific that we want to drill down into, for instance, I keep pushing a collaboration course. There are lots of options. Basically, with these 4 courses, I have gone over in the first one which was writing non-shittily, how to create a product that's ready to be published. In the second one, finding a publisher, agent, or blanket to weep under, we talked about how to publish traditionally and what the differences were between traditional publishing, self-publishing, and that sort of thing. Then on Monday this week, we talked about the wonderful world of self-publishing. And in that course, we, of course, I doubled up the name there, or the word rather. Not deliberately, but in that course we, of course, a horse is a horse, of course, we talked about self-publishing and got down to the weeds of that. So this final course is going to be about marketing, which a lot of people forget. I wouldn't say they forget entirely, but oftentimes with new authors, they find themselves with a book in their hands. They may even have gotten a traditional publishing deal, which is, like the great brass ring that everyone's reaching for, and then they're shocked to find that their book is not selling, and that just putting their staggering work of genius out there wasn't enough for them to, start making a living as an author and, quit the day job and whatever else your goals were. So let's talk about marketing. It's really a never-ending struggle. It's really a battle that never goes away. Even if you talk to some of the most successful people in the business, they're still, every time they release a new work, they're still working to get that out there, to find an audience, to build an audience. It just never really goes away. So I mentioned, it's kind of an interactive experience that I want to have here with you folks. So please do feel free to ask questions or make comments in the comment section, so I know what you're interested in hearing about. That's much more preferable to me than talking at you for an hour, although of course I can very easily do that. I'm very loquacious, so I'm happy to do that. But I'm much happier if we can sort of interact and talk about what you want to talk about. So in the first course, I mentioned that there are certain things that you as an author just have to get used to. And when we were talking about that, I was talking about just get used to the idea of talking in terms of words rather than pages, because authors write to word count, not to page count, and we went over that. You can go back to the first course to rewatch that. This is another one of those things that I want to say, if you're having any issues with, it's just something you gotta, cinch up your belt and deal with, and accept the fact that you are going to be acting as your own marketer. Okay. Now, there's a variety of outcomes there. Or I guess I'm not really. Despite just calling myself loquacious, I'm not doing great at stringing my thoughts together here. If you have self-published, as we talked about on Monday, You basically are your own publicist. That's all there is to it. There's no real way around it. If you have published with a small press, they're going to have a little something to put behind you, but the whole reason they're not a small press is because they don't have $1 million marketing, departments, that sort of thing. It's often just something. Many small presses are in fact just one person or a couple of people, and they usually don't have a whole marketing department to throw behind you. What a small press will be able to do is a little bit of social media, working with like Grindhouse, which is one of the small presses that I work with. They do have physical, they make lots of appearances at conventions and that sort of thing. So with a small press, you're going to have a partner in the sense that it goes from having one person selling your book to having two people selling your book. And in the case of traditional publishing, as I mentioned last week when we were talking about traditional publishing on Friday, you have the potential that one of the big five publishers is going to throw the full weight of their marketing department behind you. But I would not expect that. Certainly don't expect that. Be aware that as a first-time author with no special, obviously Amy Schumer or somebody who's already a celebrity, they're going to get a big push from the marketing department, which is kind of a shame because they don't necessarily need that big push from the marketing department, but that is the case. As a new author, you're probably not going to get a whole hell of a lot. They are still, nevertheless, even just for their newest people with the least expectations, they're going to make sure you're in bookstores across the country, across the world. They're going to make sure your book is mentioned in places like Publishers Weekly and trade publications, that sort of thing. And they may assign you a marketing budget. We also talked about last week, one of the episodes, I forget, you should go back and watch them all. They're all very valuable educational lessons. One of our watchers was asking about doing a book tour. That's pretty much going to be on you these days. It's fairly unlikely. Everything I've said, I've been saying throughout these courses, it comes with a lot of caveats, but I'll put it to you this way. If you've released something that's captured the zeitgeist, for instance, if you wrote a book about the behind the scenes of the Trump administration, and I'm not saying that to get into politics, we certainly can if you guys want, but these behind the scenes of the Trump administration, these have been the really big, like, million book sellers in the last couple of years. If you're one of those guys, you may have never written a book before, and you may not even necessarily have that big audience that your Amy Schumers and your Stephen Colberts have, but the publisher may still look at it and say, we know this book's going to be huge, and we'll pay for a book tour for you. But for the most part, again, if you're a fiction author, releasing your first novel, you haven't really built an audience yet, if you want a book tour, that is going to be on you, okay? So I want you to be aware of that sort of thing up front. Now, before I get into my syllabus for tonight, I'll read you the overview. You finally did it. You're now holding that novel or whatever the hell in your grubby little mitts. So the long road to success is finally over, right? Well, in our final, depending on popular demand, as I mentioned, outing, we'll be talking about, and then I go into the different sections we're going to be talking about tonight. But before I get into those sections, I did actually have a question come up on Twitter from one of our loyal viewers, Zach Dozier. And Zach asked me to address this question for the rewatch on YouTube. So again, all of these courses are going to be available on YouTube after they're live. But of course, if you want to have questions, your questions answered, you have to watch them live. This being the last one, you're going to have to reach out to me and ask for another course and another subject. But I'm certainly open to that. Anyway. Is anybody, I see there's a couple people watching. Can somebody post in the comments to let me know if the comments are working? in the previous episodes, I had already seen somebody comment by this point. So that sounds like I'm fishing for attention, but I really just want to see if the comments are working. So if somebody could do that, and I'll address Zach's question here. So Zach said, I see a lot of writers doing great networking online via social media to other writers, your courses, for example, or to reviewers in their respective niche markets, but how do I get readers interested and engaged online? BookBub, Amazon, Facebook ads. Kenny says hi. Marty says hi. Peter says hi. Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So Zach brings up a couple of good points. The first point being marketing to writers, and that's something we can certainly talk about at length. So the problem that you often run into in this industry is we're all chums, which is a good thing. I used to think, I don't know why, maybe I just had a kind of a warped view of the world, but I used to think that like the Beatles didn't like the Rolling Stones and the Rolling Stones didn't like the Who, and there was kind of this rivalry, and they were kind of fighting each other over the market. And in some cases that's true of pop culture. But for the most part, really, you're kind of dealing with people that are in the same boat as you. So really, you look back to those days, and it was actually like, the Who would release a single in support of Elton John being arrested and that sort of thing. We're actually all very chummy in this industry. And we talked about this in one of the courses when we were talking about, the weird internal life of the writer. When I see another writer, when I meet him, not really on the street, but let's say at a convention or signing or something, we have this shorthand where we understand what we're dealing with. We can talk to each other, and I don't have to take the time out to explain what an advance against royalties is. Like with you guys, the aspiring authors, I'm happy to explain that sort of thing, but it's very easy to talk about technical terms with other authors without having to explain the whole industry, which you've seen I've been doing for 4 or 5 hours here at this point, and I've barely scratched the surface. So we all do tend to get chummy. And yeah, there's little fights and there's little cliques and that kind of thing, but in any case, the point is you're going to end up as an author with a lot of authors on your friends list. Now, are those people going to buy your books? Most authors would say no, just don't count on it. Yeah, I would say don't count on it, but authors are readers first and foremost. They have to be. You can't be a good cook if you don't eat. Like if you never eat anything but ramen noodles, you're never going to become a master chef. That was a joke on Futurama, actually. Just as the Wiley Young will probably jump in at some point and remind me what the quote was, but it was. Just as the man who wishes to be a chess master must play a game of chess at some point in his life, the man who wishes to be a master chef must at some point cook a meal. That was the Futurama line. So the same basic concept plays for writers. The truth behind that issue is you're never going to make $1 million marketing to other writers. And this does raise kind of an interesting point. Why am I doing this? Well, I'm not doing this 100% for marketing purposes. I am, of course, doing it because I want to get my name out there. I want people to be aware. Primarily, I want people to be aware not just of these 4 courses, but that I want to be here as a resource for the up-and-coming authors, which is why I do these things live at conventions and readings and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to teach people and that sort of thing. And yes, of course, I want to raise my profile and be known as someone in the industry who's worth paying attention to. These are all great secondary effects of doing these courses. But I'm not doing these courses to tell you, the aspiring author, to buy my books. I mean, that's great. And that's great karma and that kind of thing if that's what you want to do. But that's not why I'm here. And that shouldn't be the basis of your marketing strategy either. So if Because what you want to bear in mind is that as hard as you are working, and hopefully you are working hard, and hopefully at the end of this course you'll have some more tools in your tool belt for doing this, as hard as you are working to put your book out there, that's how hard the other authors are working to get their books out there. And so when I have a situation where I have 2,000 friends on Facebook and 1,000 of them are probably authors, it's really unlikely that I'm going to buy any particular author's book. But that being said, someone who I value and who I know is a good writer, and who I have happened to come across their marketing, yes, I am going to pick up their book. But you're now competing with 1,000 other voices for me to do that. So it's just very, very unlikely. Now, on the other hand, you look at the other side of the coin. Let's say you have made friends with a reader, okay? I'm going to say on Twitter, because that's more... we'll just using different examples from across social media, but it's more likely that your fans are going to interact with you on Twitter than that a famous author is necessarily going to friend you on Facebook. A lot of authors, just like a lot of people in general, only want to deal with actual friends on Facebook. They don't want to be dealing with the fans. Fans are great, but not for when I'm posting my baby pictures or, talking about a meal that I ate the other night. So when you're interacting with readers, let's say on Twitter, and they feel that they've developed a connection with you and developed a rapport with you, and they look at you as something of a friend, even if you're famous, even if you're even just moderately famous, or even if you're just a published author, and that's something that they want to look at. Well, one thing to bear in mind is that most of the people that are going to buy your books are your friends, are people that think highly of you. I might buy a book by someone I think's a dick, but for the most part in this country and across the world, we talk with our wallets. We don't support dicks. So if there's someone that has pissed me off, I will probably make it a point not to buy their books, even if they are a genius. By that same token, if there's someone that you've taken the time to get to know somewhat personally, they are much, much more likely to buy your books. So I can't really tell you guys anything other than to be yourselves and to not be dicks. Because I can't teach you to be a good person. That's way outside the purview of this course. But be good to your fans. Be decent to them. Respond to them when they tweet at you. I understand Stephen King's not going to be able to respond to every windbag that thinks they deserve a piece of his ear on Twitter. But you, as a new author, you probably can respond to everyone, and you probably can get involved in discussions, not just about your books. That's another important point. If we don't hit harder upon later, I'll at least hit on now. You also don't want to be, if any of you are fans of The Critic, which is getting to be an older show now, but in case you couldn't tell, just from this very course, I am a huge fan of cartoons. And there's an old episode of The Critic where he has a bookstore standee, and all the standee does is go, "Buy my book! Buy my book! Buy my book!" Until eventually his friend has to shoot the standee to stop it from doing that. I always think of that because, good God, don't be that fucking guy either, okay? There has to be some human interest in you. There has to be some genuine emotions and desires in you that you can reach out, even though we know Twitter is kind of a false world, there has to be times that you can reach out and talk to somebody about their kids or their vegetable garden or their dogs or something. It doesn't always have to be, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. In any case, so you can see I'm getting a little bit animated about this. Haha, there's another cartoon joke for you. Because so many authors think that that's going to get them something. And it's a tightrope walk, because you do have to flog your book sometimes. But I've sometimes heard it said, and we'll talk about social media in a minute, I've sometimes heard it said, if your social media consists of 90% real conversations and 10% just flat-out marketing, you're probably fine. That's not a magic number. If there was a magic number, everyone would know the magic number and they'd all be, great, huge marketing successes. But for the most part, that's a good thing to shoot for. 1 out of your every 10 comments online, it's fine to be a marketing post. There you go. There's a little nugget of wisdom for you. So, Zach, the first part of his question was, how much do you want to market to other authors? I think we kind of covered that. Some people will tell you don't, period. I think that's a little over the top. Yeah, you will get some sales from other authors, but don't make that the cornerstone of your marketing plan. She says, how do I get readers interested and engaged? There are lots of schools of thought on this. I think the main one is the one I just went over. If you act like a real human being and you make friends, I know there's it's got to be a separation between personal and professional in any business, particularly in this one. So I'll say, at a minimum, if you are friendly with your fans, and establish that you are a good person, and hopefully you are a good person, and if you're not, maybe you just fake it for the sake of your marketing. I guess you could be a terrible person and a sociopath, but take the time when you're interacting with your fans to fake it. I think that's the main thing. There are a lot of schools of thought on this, so some people say never go political. And generally, that's my outlook, just because it works for me personally. I don't make any secret of my politics, but I surely do not flog it. But then you look at people like Chuck Wendig, or John Scalzi, who are very popular authors. They're what we kind of call like an author's author. Like, there's somebody that like you look to for advice and that kind of thing. Those guys are both super political, and they just wear their hearts on their sleeves. And then obviously, if you're an author, as an author is your second career, like Bill O'Reilly or somebody, yeah, you're going to be political, because that's what your audience wants. So that's not like a hard and fast rule, like the rules of good party etiquette, no religion, no politics, no sex. Those rules may work for you, but maybe you're also the guy that talks about sex all the time and people find that refreshing. Brath James White is a very popular extreme horror author, and he's very open about sex and politics, frankly, which is all stuff that can get you sunk in other cases. And some people are very open about religion. So you say, yeah, okay, thanks, Kozeniewski. Thanks for that useless information. Be open about religion and politics and sex, except when you're not, right? Well, the point is, do what works for you. And you may have to put out feelers. It may take you some time to get to figure out what your... I hesitate to use the word persona, but maybe that is the right word in this case, because I don't want to say that you should ever fake who you are. I mean, maybe if you're straight up Chuck Tingle and you have a pen name that's a completely different person from you, you can straight up fake who you are, but then stay true to that persona. But if you're being you, so you've all probably guessed Kozeniewski is not a pen name, otherwise I would have picked a better one. I am who I am. I have something of a persona when I'm interacting with my fans and colleagues. I'm not 100% who I am at home, but that's also true of all of us, right? Like when you go to work and you put on the tie, you act a little bit differently than you do when you're at home with your wife and kids, I think. So you may have to put out feelers, you may have to see what works for you, and I think doing that is going to be a lot easier than saying, oh, well, Chuck Wendig talks about politics, so my thing is going to be being the political guy. I think Chuck Wendig is a deeply political guy, and he cannot be rid of it, and therefore that's why he does that. In any case, this is a great question. This is a really lengthy question. I'm sorry, Zach, if I'm overdoing it, but maybe because I'm doing this at the beginning instead of at the end, I'm hitting a lot of the points we haven't gotten to yet. He says, what works, BookBub, Amazon, or Facebook ads? BookBub, for those of you that don't know, and it's good that we brought it up early, BookBub is the closest thing to a silver bullet I have encountered in this industry, okay? I just did an international BookBub ad for the Ghoul Archipelago 2 weeks ago. And I hit #1 in Canada. That's also something we need to talk about for marketing. So thanks for reminding me to bring that up, Zach. Ghoul Archipelago with a BookBub ad hit #1. And that's a great marketing tool, okay? I can now advertise that Ghoul Archipelago was the #1 bestseller. Every time I have had a BookBub ad, I have made back all the money I spent on it. It gets sales like nothing else I've ever seen get sales. So normally I would start this discussion of marketing platforms by saying basically what I said about 5 minutes ago. You got to kind of feel your way out. Try a Facebook boost. Ideally, try 5 or 10 Facebook boosts, depending on your budget, and see which of those works. So, excuse me. For instance, I have a question. I ask a question on my Facebook page every other day, and that's to engage with my audience. Because here's a tip for you: you'll never go broke asking people to talk about themselves. And I'm interested, and I respond, and I'm interested in what my audience has to say on the subject. So that's, like I was talking about earlier with your persona, that's the persona that I have. I want to find out about my audience, I want to find out what they're interested in. So I ask questions. But obviously, I don't just ask questions for the hell of it. I ask it to drive traffic to my Facebook page. And then on the odd days, or the even days, whichever it turns out to be, then I post a link to something I want you to see. So interest goes way up for the questions, then it kind of stays up because of the way the Facebook algorithm works, and we can get into that in a minute, for the actual content that I want you to see. So if I was going to boost a post, if I boosted a question, I wouldn't really get anything direct out of it, because a question doesn't do me any direct benefit. But if I boosted one of the content pieces, like a link to one of my books, it's more direct. But if I had 1,000 people seeing my question and I pay for it to be seen by 10,000, that's a greater return on investment than if 50 people see my link and I boost that up to 200, right? So you got to play around with it. I can't give you the silver bullet, except for BookBub. BookBub works. Just period, plain, BookBub works. It's terribly expensive, so you need money to do it, but BookBub works. Facebook ads, there's people who have great success with it. There's self-publishers who swear by it. Twitter, I may be lying on this, but I don't think there's any boost options for Twitter posts. So it's kind of, you got to develop your audience, you got to build out, you got to reach out, you got to make friends, you got to friend people and hope they friend you back, engage in conversations, build the audience, then your tweets will be worth a lot more in marketing terms. What was the other thing you said? Amazon ads. I've had varied success with Amazon ads. The trick with Amazon ads, so with Amazon ads you can pay a certain amount to have your ad shown to people who have searched for certain terms. So like if I'm trying to sell Brainerd Jones, I could put in zombie and maybe a similar author like Jonathan Mayberry or Max Brooks or somebody, and then somebody types in Max Brooks and you have those ads on Amazon that you see, so you want to target that to the right people. That's again something you just have to learn from the School of Hard Knocks. You try Jack Ketchum on your one book as a term, and you try Sea Adventures on another book as a term, and you're going to have varied success. And if you try to throw all the spaghetti at the wall with Amazon ads, you're just going to spend an assload of money and not get anything out of it, because your people that are just Googling horror are probably not looking for your zombie detective novel. So it's got its ups and its downs. So regarding those various marketing methods that Zach was asking about, for the most part, you got to feel them out. BookBub is a silver bullet, but it's expensive. So here's where what we were talking about on Monday. As a self-publisher, you are providing your own marketing expenses. So that's the deal with that. Marty said, I may have to steal the question thing. Yeah, feel free. You can take a look. You can see how I do it. I alternate every day on Facebook. I don't make a secret of that, especially at things like this, because it's been very successful for me. So since he brought that up, the way the Facebook algorithm works is every post that you put on your business page, Facebook shows it to a certain number of your followers. It's way different from the days before Facebook was monetized, when basically, you had your wall and you saw what all other people were posting. If I think I have about 1,000 followers on my Facebook business page. So Facebook will show it to, let's say, 10% of those. And then of those 100 people, if those 100 people interact, it'll show it to more people. Okay, so something like a question gets a lot of interaction. It gets responses, it gets likes, it gets comments, and that kind of thing. Then that makes it be shown to more and more people. Then the next day, when I have my less desirable marketing post, because of the success of the question post, it's going to be shown to a bigger percentage of people, based on what it saw last time. So it's as close as you can get to gaming the system. You can't really game the system. I mean, I guess you could buy followers or something, but that's as close as you can get organically to gaming the Facebook system. What was the other thing that we said we had to talk about? It was something that Zach's question brought up. Damn, I should write these things down, huh? That'd be great for a writer to do. Something that I brought up. All right. Well, let's see if we can get our brain back around to that. So, now that we are a solid half hour into this course, let's get into the actual content that we were talking about. But do feel free to ask your questions in the comments as they come up. So, social media marketing. We've been talking about that a little bit. I do a lot of social media panels at conventions because it's something that I have fought long and hard for 7 years. As I said at the beginning of this course, just get used to the idea that you're going to be flogging your work all the time, and that's your social media thing. Or you could also hire a PA if you have the money. There's another secret tip that I was very happy with the work that my PA did. Unfortunately, she got a real job, so now I got to do this shit myself again. So regarding social media marketing, I do a lot of these panels. I do it with a lot of people who are social media experts, like far more so than me, like people that are paid to do this. So a lot of it, for the kind of people that are watching something like this, it's second nature. But what I often say is, do the social media that you are comfortable with. This is actually my answer to a lot of questions. If you're a big old introvert, writing may not be the field for you, or at least making a ton of money as a writer may not be the field for you, because you have to put yourself out there. But that being said, yeah, I understand some people are really introverted and don't want to be out there online. You're going to have to make some kind of effort, but make the effort that is comfortable for you, okay? So one of the questions I often get at these panels is, should I make a big old effort to be on Facebook and Tinder and Instagram and Twitter and Venmo and Buppity Boo and the new thing that just came up and the new thing that just collapsed last week? No, is my short answer. Now, you will often hear the answer, it's wise to grab up that real estate, okay? So it may be good to grab Instagram.com/Kozeniewski so that nobody else can steal it or make a like a parody account or something like that, it may be useful to grab those just so that nobody else can have them. But in terms of interaction, you're going to spread yourself way too thin. Okay? So you need to pick out a couple of social media platforms that you're familiar with, that you're comfortable with, that you like using. And don't drive yourself crazy trying to jump on every last new bandwagon and figure out how to use Venmo and, give away money to people or whatever the hell you have to do. So like me, for instance, I'm not on Instagram. It's not my thing. I'm not a visual person. I'm a word-based person. It's not my thing. I don't understand it. I don't like it. I don't get it. So I don't do Instagram. I have a blog because I like having a space where I can have really lengthy discourses on stuff where I don't have to limit myself to 280 characters. And then I use my blog as a hub. So this is my recommendation to everybody. Pick one source that's going to be your hub that you can direct everybody to. It could be your Amazon your Amazon author page, which, by the way, if you haven't fucking claimed your Amazon author page, there's another 100% just fucking get over it Kozeniewski nugget of wisdom for you. Claim your goddamn Amazon author page, okay? Because you look stupid if you don't have one. I will happily go and Google any author who has ever been mentioned on my blog or on Twitter or anything, and if they don't have an Amazon author page, I don't know what to share, okay? And I feel like an idiot sharing their Twitter or something where you can't buy their shit, okay? So just claim your Amazon author page. Put your put your bio on there. You don't have to do anything else with it. But oh, by the way, if you've claimed your Amazon author page, you can also look at your book sales, so you can find out if your publisher's screwing you or not. I don't know. I don't know why people don't do that. But if you're not an idiot, claim your Amazon author page, okay? And you can use that as a hub, or you can use your blog as a hub, or you can use Twitter as a hub, whatever you're most comfortable with. And then you just have all of your other social media directing to that. So, for instance, if you did what we talked about before and you claimed your Instagram and you claimed your Venmo and whatever the hell else all the little stuff is out there, all you have to do is have it say redirect to my blog. That's what I want you to see. Redirect to my Amazon author page. That's what I want you to see. And then, again, like I was talking about before, you want to be genuine when interacting with your fans. So if you don't have the time to be genuine across 15 platforms, pick the platform you feel you can be genuine on and use that, okay? So that's my main outlook for social media. In these courses, I would also usually talk about the Facebook algorithm, which we talked about. So the reason why I say pick the platforms that you're comfortable with is because each platform has its own idiosyncrasies, right? That's why you use them or don't use them, because they have functionalities that you like or dislike. And again, it's better if you're familiar with those idiosyncrasies before you try and use it for marketing. So one of the things we talk about in these courses is the idiosyncrasies related to timing, okay? So you've probably noticed, if you ever dig into it, when you make posts on certain platforms at certain times, they are much more popular than other times, okay? And so it's not strictly like, okay, 3 a.m., yeah, you're not going to get a lot of traction at 3 a.m., but when do people check Twitter? They check Twitter when they wake up in the morning, at lunch, when they get home at night, before they go to bed. Now you can Google this, you can research this, you can become a social media maven and learn that like 12:51 p.m. is the right time to talk about your lunchbox related novel or whatever it is. You can drill way down deep into that. Certainly have at it, go crazy if that's something you're comfortable with. For the most part, I pretty much I played with it. I found out that my posts on Facebook usually get the most traction in the mid-evening. So most of my Facebook posts go up at 9 p.m. or 8:30 p.m. or so. It's just something I found by by trial and error. Okay. So all of these platforms have their little idiosyncrasies that you have to learn, which is why it's probably better to just learn the ones that you're familiar with. You're really not being paid. You could find a publicist if you want. We talked about that's actually an interesting point. I assume if at some point somebody's going to ask me this, should you pay for marketing? The answer is do what's comfortable for you. My main focus with this is assuming that you're not independently wealthy. Now we talked about during the self-publishing thing, you've got to pay your cover artist, you've got to pay your editor. There are expectations of who you have to pay. It's just professional courtesy. You just cannot. You're expecting to get paid for your work, right? So just remember everybody else is expecting the same thing. That being said, you can have work trade. You can offer to write an article for somebody, share a tweet for somebody if you happen to have a bigger Twitter platform, say. You can do a little bit of work trade like that. But if we're just straight up talking about you have a little bit of money socked away, should you hire a publicist? I would make the same warnings that I would regarding your agent. Don't get a shit publicist. There's no license to be a publicist or a marketing master in this country. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to get a degree. You just kind of call yourself a publicist. So if somebody's offering, well, that's probably a red flag right there. But if you're looking at somebody, if you're researching, do your research. Dig in. See who they do marketing for. Talk to those people. That's another. Actually, completely overlooked that when I was talking about the, searching for agents and small publishers. Talk to the people who have been published by those people that you're looking to work with. They're going to give you the straight. They're going to give you the straight dope. It's the same thing if you're looking for a publicist. Talk to the people that they've worked for before. A lot of publicists are just complete shitbirds, and they just call themselves that. I've worked with a bunch of them. A bunch of the small publishers that I've worked with have had in-house marketing people that just were not worth the time it took me to write them an email, honestly. So be aware of that. And one thing I mentioned earlier, maybe it's better to find yourself a PA. I had great success. Now, your mileage may vary because you may hire an idiot. It's hard. You got to do the research. You got to find out if this is somebody that's dependable and trustworthy. But having a PA, I basically told her, and this is Jessica Epley. I'm not trying to dance around. I think she's been open about our professional relationship, and I'm happy to be open about it. This is Jessica Epley, who is also an author, which is one of the reasons why I hired her, because when I could go and I could say to her, hey, push this book, put this on Amazon, and she already knew the basics of what I was talking about. And she was great. So I hired her, and I was just like, put up this post, put up that post, save me the time, plan out my questions for Facebook. And it worked like gangbusters. So that might be a different route you could take. Maybe you don't hire a publishing expert. Maybe you hire someone who's just going to do the grunt work for you. I strongly recommend it. So that's a little bit of talking about social media marketing. And if you have any other questions, again, you can go in the comments. Marty says, LOL, Chuck Tingle. That was a little while ago. Yeah, Chuck is the... Chuck Tingle, if you don't know, is the guy that's always writing the books that are very topical, like Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt, or, I Had Sex with the Coronavirus. I don't know what he's writing these days, but it's always a very, very weirdly topical erotica. Pete says, I have been in and out of this session. Oh, that's a whole long comment. I'm sorry. I was like, I've been in and out. What are you talking about, Pete? Okay. Pete says, I've been in and out of this session, definitely going to watch it in full when it is on YouTube. Have you got any advice for Twitter presence before you have published your book? On Twitter, I will be real positive, ask my favorite authors questions, and also retweet them. Sometimes I feel like I look like Annie Wilkes and don't get many responses from authors or people on Twitter in general. Okay, that's a good question. So Pete's building up to be an author. He's not at step one yet, which is to have a publishable book. Or maybe he is, but he hasn't sold it yet. So this actually dovetails really nicely with what my next topic was going to be, which was moving paper and meatspace. So the main thing when I'm talking about meatspace is the community. Okay, so we talked a little bit before about, marketing to other authors. Yeah, your goal is not to market to other authors, but we'd be dumbasses to assume that authors aren't also readers. So the people that you're interacting with at a convention are potentially going to buy your book. Okay. So he's talking about, what if I'm not even at that point yet? What if I don't have the book to market? Well, yes, a lot of people in this community are readers primarily, or were readers primarily before they started writing. Okay? So this is where I would say, be yourself. You have practice time now to work on practicing that persona. And again, I talked about, I don't mean persona to be fake, but think about what you're trying to project out there. Advice that people usually say is fake it till you make it. And I'm a big proponent of that. Like, for one thing, oh, shit, did I go out? No. Can anybody still hear me? Shit. It sort of looks like I'm still broadcasting. Did you guys lose me? Can anybody still see me? Maybe it's just on my end. Can somebody let me know in the comments? Can you still see me? It's telling me, sorry, we're having trouble playing this video. But I can't tell if that's just purely on my end. You're good. Okay. Alright, well, now I'll just... Okay. Oh, it's weird not seeing myself on the screen. Sorry about that. I'm a little thrown off. I will not lie to you. But I've had so many technical issues so far. But that's alright. Okay. So, right. So fake it till you make it. A lot of authors talk about being unpublished, and then there was this whole thing about being pre-published, and then there was this whole thing about you can call yourself an author even if you've never finished a manuscript. Okay, so what they're getting at with that is, you need to act like a professional, and people will treat you like a professional. It's the same thing as in the rest of your life, as at your day job. Okay. Nobody wants to deal with a doctor who's like, boy, this is my first day on the floor. And those doctors need to get over their imposter syndrome. And even if it really is their first day on the floor, be like, okay, I'm a doctor. People are looking to me for a certain bedside manner. That's not a great term for authors, but yeah, you should have something like that, a certain amount of confidence and behavior that you're projecting out there. So one thing you may be doing, Pete, in your particular case, you may be overshooting the mark by trying to talk to your favorite authors. We talked about a little bit earlier about, somebody like me, I'll generally respond to everybody who tweets me. Somebody like Stephen King absolutely does not have time to, okay? And now there's a great breadth of diversity in between those 2 points. So what you may want to look at is, instead of trying to jump into conversations with your favorite authors, you may want to start looking at people that are closer to my side of the spectrum, that are still on the way up, that are part of the community but are still kind of trying to find their sea legs. Those kind of people are going to be much more likely to interact with you. Okay, and that's where you're going to be coming into this race. Okay, so if we look at it like a sequence, okay, you're on this far end. Okay, this is why I wish I had my screen here, so I'm not sure if anybody can see what I'm doing with my hands. But you're coming in on this far end. You're going to be a working author for a while. You're going to build your way up. Maybe one day you'll be, a full-time author. Then maybe one day you'll be Stephen King famous, and that's great. So Okay, everybody's saying yes. I can hear you. Still broadcasting. Still see you. Okay, great. So what you may want to do is try and make friends with some of the less well-known authors. And I don't want to say anybody because I want us to all keep projecting that that veneer of great, grand success. But yeah, maybe you want to shoot a little more towards this end of the spectrum. And you'll probably get a lot more traction that way. And don't worry, because it's like anything. Like, if the kids in the baby pool know who you are, the kids in the big pool will eventually start to know who you are. Okay? Be real positive, ask questions, retweet. Yeah, this is all good stuff. Work on getting followers. The one thing I say about getting Twitter followers, again, this is the closest I can get to organically gaming the system. Across my social media, I don't fake anything, but I do sort of know how those systems work, so I have to, work with what I've got. One thing you can do is follow people, maybe follow people a little more aggressively, because what you'll find is that a certain percentage of people always follow back, and a certain percentage of people will tentatively follow you back. So if you follow, say, 100 people today, 25 are just going to follow you back just because you followed them. And then another 25 may follow you back because they look at your page and they see, oh, Pete's a good guy. He interacts well with, the Kozeniewskis and Marty Willsies and so on. And then a few of them are going to ignore it for a while. Maybe 5 or 10 more are going to follow you at some point. So now, let's say you followed 100 people and now 60 have followed you back. Okay? So now you've got some more followers. You've got a little bit more people to play with. Okay? A little more people to interact with. And yeah, I know it's bad because then everyone looks at, ideally what you want is you're following very few people and are being followed by very many people. That's the desirable thing where, President Clinton or whoever is following one person but is followed by 10 million. And that's very desirable on Twitter or whatever. I figure at some point when you get actual fame and fortune, that will kind of take off and take care of itself. But while you're still developing your audience, that's one way to bring in more followers. So you can follow a little more aggressively and people will follow you back a little more aggressively. I think, and to answer your question, do I look like Annie Wilkes? Probably not, because you are self-aware enough to ask that question. So I always feel kind of weird about these things because the kind of people that come to these courses to learn about this sort of thing are not really the people that could benefit from this information. It's the real people who are already convinced they're geniuses and they don't need to learn anything that should be learning this stuff. So I don't want to oversimplify, but the fact that you've had these thoughts and the fact that you're concerned about it is a really good sign. The fact that you're trying to better yourself and go to courses like this is a really good sign. Okay, so I'm going to say I don't normally make fiats. So far I've only made like 3 or 4 during this course, but I'd say if you're smart enough to ask, am I Annie Wilkes? No, you're probably not. Okay, everybody says you're good. We can see in here, still broadcasting. Okay, I guess it's just me. I guess I just lost myself, which is just really off-putting. Okay, so we have about 6 minutes left. I'm happy to go all night. If you have questions, put them in the comments. But okay, so we were supposed to be talking about moving paper in meatspace. Okay, I think I have covered a bit of that tonight. I hate to keep harping on the point now that I brought it up 2 or 3 times already, but no, your publisher is in 99 cases out of 100 not going to organize a book tour for you. So what does that mean? Well, try and organize a book tour yourself. You're most likely, if you're self-published, not going to be able to get into Barnes & Nobles. I say most likely, that's not because I'm hemming and hawing and everything has to be caveat with me. That's because Barnes & Noble Corporate does not want self-publishers. Okay? So again, 99 times out of 100, you're not going to be in one of the big bookstores. But you can sometimes develop a relationship with local people. The local manager may be willing to buck that trend for your benefit. The local manager may be somebody who is welcoming in self-published people. You're going to have, for the most part, though, much more luck dealing with your independent booksellers. I mentioned Second and Charles here in Harrisburg, where we had a big group signing. Oh, that's another good point. If you're trying to just sell yourself, you're not super desirable right now. Sorry, guys, you're probably not Stephen King yet. But if you get a group of people, group of like-minded people, like myself and Robert Swartwood, I'm just naming people that are in my area, okay? Get them together in a group and say, hey, we're going to have a big old Halloween book signing with a bunch of local horror authors. Well, that's kind of desirable. And now you find yourself sitting next to the Kozeniewskis and the Swartwoods, Swartwood being immensely popular and myself being, mildly well-known. And then you, who, at this juncture in your life, presumably is completely unknown. So that's a good opportunity. You've kind of gone in, so that's another reason why we like to develop these communities, right? Because we can all work together to build each other up, okay? That's how I look at the writing community. We're not here to tear each other down, like I was talking about earlier. The Stones weren't calling in hits on the Beatles. They were friends. They understood that people who buy Beatles albums also buy Stones albums. So you can organize your own book signings. I'm going to tell you right now, get used to hating book signings. Because if you sit there for 3 hours, here's what your book signing is going to go like. Your mom's going to come in, and the one or two people you told about it at work are going to come in, and that's great. And then 100 people are going to walk by your table, and you're just going to feel miserable. And then maybe one of them you'll be able to flag down and say, hey, would you be interested in book by unknown author? And give them your best sales pitch, okay? So I've seen people like Jonathan Jans, who is just incredibly charismatic in person and is really good at that whole cold sale thing. And I'm all right at it. I've sat through just hundreds and hundreds of hours of trying to cold sell people. I've seen Marty do it. He's good at it too. You just have to sell your book, be human, be personable, do all the stuff we've been saying before that works on social media. If you see somebody wearing their, I don't know if you guys can see it. If you see somebody wearing their Return of the Living Dead t-shirt, maybe you say, hey, you like Return of the Living Dead? Well, you might like the Ghoul Archipelago. Talk to your fellow pop culture people about your fellow pop culture. And if they like you, you know who else is really, really fucking good is Aaron Dries. And Aaron Dries is just a genuinely, he just genuinely loves pop culture. And when he goes to these pop culture events, he can just talk and talk and talk and be like, oh, Psycho 3, yeah, I was watching that the other night. And it's just completely part of his personality and his persona. So you can try and look for local booksellers who will host you. The other nice thing about doing this in groups is you have somebody to sit next to and talk to while everybody's walking by you. And you also have, so if I'm sitting next to, Robert Swartwood, or I'm sitting next to Pete, and Pete's friend comes by something from him, he can be like, oh, you might like Kozeniewski's book. So pass that down, okay? When I have people that come in for me, I'm always like, oh, you know what? You're going to like Swartwood's. Take a look. At least try and do that. That's, the strength of doing this as a group. That's the strength of this community, okay? Other things are, well, I sort of hit it on the head, is pop culture conventions, okay? So if you are a horror writer, you can find horror convention. You'll also find some success at, science fiction conventions. If you're a romance writer, I'm mostly familiar with, because I write horror and science fiction. I'll do okay at a Star Trek convention. I'll do really great at a horror convention. I'll do really gangbusters at a horror literature convention. Romance convention, so here's one thing that I've heard it said. I have not yet taken the plunge, so I apologize to all of you. I don't have any direct information on this yet. But I have heard that if you go to something like your local Pumpkin Fest, okay, or your local bridal convention, okay, and you set up shop and you're selling horror and sci-fi books, I've heard people like Armand Rosemilli and that kind of thing say, you're going to get all the people that were dragged to that event and are bored. So all the husbands that got dragged to the LuLaRoe shop or whatever are going to be like, oh shit, is this guy selling books? Oh, let me go and talk to the book guy for a while. I have heard that works. I don't want to recommend that yet because I haven't tried it myself, but your mileage may vary. I have heard that places. I've also been to things like book fairs where people were just not interested in horror, even though it was a book fair and you would think, oh, these are the people. They were just very, it varies. So it's going to be hit or miss, like a lot of the stuff we've talked about tonight. You're just going to have to kind of feel out your local area in terms of conventions and events and that sort of thing. And what else would be good? Libraries. I always want to talk about, Becky Spratford, who runs RA for All and RA Horror for All. Always recommends trying to get into your local libraries. Now there you're going to have the same issue you had with your bookstores, which is that libraries are not really interested in author signings, and they're not really interested in self-published and small-published authors. So what you want to do there is, again, do the group thing. Say, oh, can we do a romance author roundtable for Valentine's Day? Or do a class like this. Do something that's going to benefit the library. Okay, so this was advice that I've been given when I've met with librarians. What they want you to do, first of all, they're probably planned out a year or two in advance. Okay, so don't plan to walk in on October 1st and do something this Halloween. Okay, but if you walk in and you say, I can teach a course, I'm going to bring some real value-added benefit to the library, that's going to be like a load off of the librarian's plate, because now they can say, oh, well, now I've got a course for February, a year from now. Yeah, that's great. That's something that now I can plan on that. Okay. So what else can we do in meatspace? The other thing is, in our current situation, is mail marketing. It's not really mail marketing. It's kind of a hybrid kind of thing, but you want to have some of your books on hand. So if people request the paperbacks, you can offer your signed, your autographed, personalized books and mail them out to people. Okay. So that's kind of going back to what we were talking about with, I think Pete or somebody at one of the earlier courses was saying, oh, you have to buy your own books. Yeah, invest in some books. Try to sell them at conventions and that sort of thing. Don't overbuy. I'd say buy 10 or 20 to begin with. Feel out your conventions. You'll sell 10 or 20 eventually, but don't buy 1,000 and be stuck with them, because that doesn't really benefit anybody but Bezos. Then you'll have some on hand. You will, when you have a book release, have people come to you and say, oh, can I get an autographed copy? Can I get an autographed copy for my kid? You want to be prepared to be able to send that in the mail. That's another good thing for your PA to do, if you have hired one. So that's moving paper and meatspace. We talked about social media. Went a little bit over. I guess this is kind of a meaty topic, even though we haven't had too many questions. But if you have them, feel free to ask them. The last thing I'll talk about is getting reviews and attention. I think I've been pretty clear and on point this whole time about the kind of positive attention that you want to garner by being a good, genuine person. I can't teach you how to be a good, genuine person, but I can tell you if you're a terrible person, at least try and fake it, as I mentioned earlier. One thing that really will not work, in spite of me talking about your personas and stuff, is being a jerk-off. It does not drive sales. It will make you the laughing stock of the community. The community that we've already discussed, like I pointed out 4 or 5 times just in this hour-long, class, where the community is going to benefit you and where making friends with people like Marty and, Swartwood and them are going to help lift you up. So if you are a jackass, the community is going to know about it. And the community, nobody has blackball authority. And as we talked about in the self-publishing panel, nobody can stop you from self-publishing, okay? Your baboon fart story can be in your hands tomorrow. However, if you're a jackass and you try to advertise as a jackass, you're going to seriously limit your opportunities. So some people think they're going to be Andrew Dice Clay and that's going to be their persona. I've never really seen it work out. I've seen a lot of people that thought they were going to get into a bunch of fights and then that was going to raise their profile and then they were going to be famous. I have never seen it work out. I have seen a lot of people get as close to being blackballed as they can, which is, it is now well known in the community that people will not work with you. Now you're not going to get in anthologies. Now if I know about that and I'm editing an anthology, I'm in most likely friends with the editors and the authors that you decided you wanted to pick a fight with. So I'm just going to say, oh, okay, Jackass #1 from online? Yeah, I'm not going to have him in my anthology. So all the doors and windows start getting shut for you, okay? That's not going to work. But in terms of getting reviews and attention, you want to get attention for the right kind of things. And while making a spectacular explosion and just completely collapsing on yourself will get you attention, it will not get you fans, and it will not help you in the long run. So I'd say get attention for being good to people. Like people we talked earlier, why are you doing this class? I'm doing this class because I want to help people. Yeah, it's great to have my name out there. Yeah, there are certain secondary ancillary benefits. But I want to put out good karma and, have that come back to me. I want people to remember, oh, that's a guy who's helpful. And remember what I was saying before. If I was ever checking in an anthology and I was on the fence about something based on its merit, and I realized, oh, this is a person who was a jackass to me and my friends, I'm not going to let them in. The opposite happens sometimes too. Sometimes people are kind of on the fence and the short story may have merit, and they say, I'm kind of torn between two, but Kozeniewski's a really good guy, so I'm going to give it to him over this person who's an unknown or is maybe has a bit of a prima donna complex. So you want to get attention for that. You want to get attention for supporting other authors, like we talked about earlier. It's not a knife fight. A rising tide raises all boats. If you are helping out somebody, if I'm boosting Wesley Southard's signal, Wesley Southard more than likely is going to boost my signal later. Okay? It's not a transactional thing. It's not an expectation. It's just a lifestyle. So be a good person, get good attention, and if your work is good, your work will get good attention. I wish I had a silver bullet for you. I wish I could tell you all, just, type in this HTML document and put it on your website and you'll suddenly be a famous author. But it's not. There's no silver bullets aside from BookBub, which we discussed already. So you want to get positive vibes, man. Eat some cheese, eat some wine, get some rays, okay? The other main way you're going to get attention is with reviews, okay? And this is another one of those fake it till you make it kind of things like I was talking about at the beginning of the course. When you look at books, some people do. I look at books and I see how many reviews they've gotten, okay? So somebody like, J.K. Rowling, it doesn't matter. She's just going to, every time she releases something, she's going to get 1 million reviews. For the rest of us, it is a fight, okay? Now, your traditional publishers, for whatever reason, I'm not sure exactly what goes on behind the scenes, but I assume what they do is they send out a lot of ARCs, which if you don't know are advanced reading copies. They send out a lot of ARCs to newspapers and, I guess, blogs and industry magazines and that sort of thing. And they just, okay, part of what we're going to do is this is going to go out to people. And you pretty much, every time you have a traditionally published book, it's going to have a few hundred reviews just because it was traditionally published. And it's just got a bigger footprint than your self-publishing. Then on the, then on the very far end of the spectrum, you have your self-publishers who had no interest in any marketing, and they just have 0 reviews. Couldn't even get mom to take the time to write 20 words. And when you see that, you go, you know, for good or for ill, I'm not going to say there's not undiscovered diamonds in the rough, because there are. But if you have no reviews, I'm probably not going to read your book. Because if even mom couldn't bother to write a glowing review, why would I bother, right? So, in between those extremes, okay, you have to be constantly hustling to get reviews for your book, okay? Now, reviews do a couple of things. So first of all, on the review aggregating sites, where again, I should say there's tons of them, but the only one that really matters is Amazon, okay? So when you're looking at Amazon and you see Stephen King got 10,000 reviews on If It Bleeds, and Joe Jackass got no reviews, so he looks like a real idiot. You're going to want to have, you know, as best you can, maybe 50 or 100 reviews. And you're just going to have to get out there and get slogging and get them, okay? So one thing you can do is you can ask your friends and relatives who you know have read the book to leave a review. They're usually going to shy away from that because friends and relatives don't want to do that. But you can make it clear it's a way of supporting you that doesn't cost them anything. And really you only need, it used to be 20 words, I think, for an Amazon review. I think it's even less now. I think it's just 5 words or something. They don't always have to leave 5 stars. I've talked about this at length elsewhere, but don't worry about getting good reviews. Just worry about getting reviews, okay? If your book is shit, well, then you're going to have to learn your lesson for the next time. But if your book has nothing but 5-star reviews, it's going to look fake, okay? It's going to look like you went out and solicited mom and her knitting circle to give you 5 stars, okay? So what you want is a realistic-looking, what I call the J-curve, okay? It's not just, I didn't make it up. It's not a Kozeniewskiism. It's a thing. So your J-curve is that most people will give you 5 stars. The second most that people will give you is 1 stars, because in this society, everything is either the greatest thing ever or the worst thing ever. And then there are a few people that will give you 2, 3, and 4, okay, to fill in the J in the curve, okay? That's a realistic-looking review set, okay? Bunch of 5 stars, hopefully not too many 1 stars, but 1 stars are usually going to be your second. And then the 2s, 3s, and 4s are somewhere in between, okay? Those reviews could be used as talking points if you end up on other podcasts, so something to think about. Yes. Thank you, Mikey. So Mikey Abraham said, those reviews can be used as talking points if you end up on other podcasts, so something to think about. That's absolutely the case. So when you have your reviews, the one thing they do is they make you look legitimate on Amazon. The other thing they do is you can share those reviews. Now you have content. Okay, remember we were talking earlier about having quality content for Facebook and Twitter and so forth? Somebody who's taking the time to write a review on their blog or in their website or online newspaper or whatever, you should take the time to share that across your social media. Now you're sharing somebody else's content, and yes, it's very transparent what you're doing, but they've mentioned you, so now you're boosting them. Now they're going to want to boost you more, okay? It's part of developing that community. You're all raising each other up, okay? And the other thing is, when you have those blurbs, now I touched on this real briefly, but there is actually a difference between the back jacket. I try and usually just call it the back jacket copy. A lot of people call that a blurb. But in the industry, what a blurb actually is when it says, greatest thing since sliced toast, you know, James Patterson on the front of your book, that little quote, that's a blurb. So where do you think those come from? When you're a self-publisher, okay? Yeah, when you're a traditional publisher, they're reaching out to people. And you can do that. You can reach out to, like Pete was saying, sometimes I'm scared to reach out to more famous people. Feel free to try and say, hey, could you read my manuscript and give me a blurb? I mean, it's a little bit of a big favor to ask, and some people don't like it, but it's part of the industry, so it's something that you're going to have to get used to doing. However, by this point in the process, by this point in the marketing process, you've now gone through all of your rejections for your agents, all of your rejections for your small publishers. You're self-published, and you've gone through all of your rejections for asking for reviews, and you've gone through getting all the shitty reviews, so you should have a pretty thick skin by this point, okay? So just remember, maybe now's the time that you reach out and get some blurbs from people. But in the absence of that, why not say the greatest thing since sliced toast, most sublime book reviews? It's a great thing. And again, you're boosting them. You're giving them legitimacy. And I love Most Sublime. She's one of my favorite reviewers. She was actually included her name in one of my books. That's Nia. From Skin Wrapper, and well, all right, I ruined the ending of Skin Wrapper for all you. It's Nia from Hematophages and any other Hematophages related material, or Charlene's Horror Corner, or Sadie Hartman from Mother Horror on Instagram. So these people, you can take their quotes and you can put it on your Amazon page. Remember I told you to claim your goddamn Amazon page? That's what you can do. Now you can go to your book page and you can say, greatest things in sliced bread, Mother Horror, and that sort of thing. Now, people are looking at it, and they may not necessarily know who Most Sublime is, or Mother Horror, or whoever, but you're not just saying something transparently that is a friend of yours, okay? This is an actual legit review site. And as you raise the review site's, profile, that raises your profile because now you've got good blurbs from a good review site. Okay, so it's all an interactive ecosystem. But yeah, get used to the idea. So I said you can ask your friends and family. You're going to have very little return on that. But then you're going to have to go through the hard process of reaching out and asking every blogger you can find online. I'm going to caveat that by saying, make sure they review your genre. Okay? And that goes all the way back to the first thing we talked about, which was genre. Okay? It's not going to help you. It's going to waste everybody's time if you're querying a romance reviewer with your science fiction book. Okay? So just don't waste your time. Don't waste their time. Don't get on the bad radar. Okay? Get out there. Do your research. Find out who's reviewing books like yours. If you feel like, and one thing you can do, and this is, again, not really gaming the system as close as I can get to gaming the system without being a computer genius. If I know that my work is similar to Jonathan Janz's work, I will just Google Jonathan Janz, find his recent reviews, and then I'll take it even one step further. Another reason why we, have this community here, why we rely on each other in the community. I will not only Google who has been reviewing Janz, I will email people and I will say, hey, I saw your review of Janz. He's a buddy of mine. Maybe you'll be interested in my work. And that works great because you know what that says to your reviewer? It says that you've read at least one of their reviews. You're not just some jackass who's cold calling them. You've actually done your research. And that you have reached out to somebody that they enjoy. Okay? So you're kind of checking a bunch of blogger marks on there. Now, don't just fucking fake it. Don't say you're friends with Kozeniewski when you're not. I will know, and I will warn all of my blogger friends not to review you. But if you genuinely are taking the time, it all builds on each other. If you took the time when we were at the beginning of the course to build your social media and build good relationships with people, you can now say, oh, I built that relationship with Wes Southard. Let me use that relationship with Wes Southard to, let me rely on his goodwill and put out more goodwill. And now if you're a good person, guess what? Wes is going to get more goodwill because of your goodwill. So this is why I say don't be a jackass. This is why I say all the things I say, because it's all interconnected. Okay? But, yeah, so getting reviews and attention. I think that's everything. And it's shaping up to be, I think that this is going to be the longest one that we've done so far. So thanks everybody for sticking it out. It does seem like right now, unless I missed a comment somewhere, that this will be the last Publish Like a Motherfucker, at least for the foreseeable future. If you did like what you see, feel free to reach out to me, social media, email, comments on my blog, comments on here, wherever you like. Let me know if there's something else you're interested in hearing about. I'm very open to the idea. I've actually had a blast. I really appreciate all you guys coming out. It was even more fun than I originally thought it was going to be. I just did this because, we're all kind of confined at home, and I miss doing this. I miss interacting with people and sharing what little wisdom I've been able to, garner over the years. And, oh, hang on. Oh, we do have a question. Mikey says, can you compare one author's work to another? Like, if I feel like someone is going to be the next D.F. Wallace, can I make that a review? That is, I'm going to answer that. I know that is a small joke, but I'm going to answer that straight. So that's kind of, people go both ways about that. Now, if you notice, because it's convenient, going throughout this course, I've routinely brought up Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, James Patterson, very famous people, okay? Because those are very easy touch points for all of us, okay? Where you're going to run into issues, okay, so in a situation like this, that's why I use those shorthands, okay? Because everybody knows who Frank Herbert is, everybody knows who Stephen King is. I don't have to spend half an hour explaining to you who's the most famous horror writer in the world. The problem when you are pitching a work or reviewing a work in comparing yourself or others to very famous people like D.F. Wallace is that it sounds disingenuous. It's like that thing where somebody says, oh, this car is going to be the greatest car since a Mercedes. It's an economy Mercedes, okay? Well, you know damn well it's not, okay? And you know damn well I'm not the next D.F. Wallace or whatever. So the other thing is that usually those people aren't still routinely writing. So you're especially going to run into an issue where you're comparing yourself to some insane classic, okay? So if you're pitching something to an agent, say, and you say, this is going to remind you of Dostoevsky, you're going to sound like you haven't done your research. You're going to sound like you're a pompous windbag who thinks they write like Dostoevsky. And you're going to sound like somebody who hasn't read in their genre, okay? So the best advice I can give you on this is you need to compare yourself or others to somebody similar who has published something in the last 3 years, okay? That's not Stephen King, all right? So if I compare myself to Jans or Wes Southard or Summer Cannon or someone, these are all people who are publishing now, who actually write somewhat like I do. And if you're a publishing professional, you're not looking for the next Dostoevsky. You're looking for the next Summer Cannon, okay? So in comparisons, you want to kind of make them timely. So usually, if an agent sees something that's been compared to some towering work of classic, if you're comparing yourself to Don Quixote, you're not doing yourself any favors, okay? So that, yeah, comparing authors' works. Yeah, so sometimes talk about comp titles and that sort of thing. I very rarely do it when I'm pitching. Reviewers do tend to do comp titles as well, but of course with reviewers, since they're current reviewers, they're also usually going to compare you to something recent. Okay, so like Hematophage is often compared to The Luminous Dead, which is a fairly recent sci-fi horror piece that was released. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. So if there are no other questions, like I said, let me know if you guys want to do something like this again. There are a million topics under the sun. As I always say, I'm very happy to talk at you for an hour or more. Reach out to me. Let me know if you want to have another Publish Like a Motherfucker round 5, 6, 7, 8, so on and so forth. Otherwise, if you liked what you heard, look for me. All of my books are on Amazon. Some of them are on other booksellers. I would particularly recommend that if you pick up a paperback of The Perfectly Fine House, that'll really help to support my small publishing partner, Grindhouse Press, as well as my collaborator, Wiley Young. And other than that, I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have. I really did miss doing this, and I'm glad I got the chance to do it. So happy to do it again. Let me know what you think. But otherwise, that's the end for now. And thanks to everybody for coming out. And stay safe out there, okay?